Family-friendly show. I'm sorry. Fuck Saquon Barkley.
He's a Giants fan in case anyone
It's
doesn't
Saquon
know.
Barkley.
He's bitter. He needs to move on, and there's a lot of
It could have been
bitterness stored in
any
his
other
heart.
team.
Pay the man then.
Oh, man.
That's on you. Let's walk you through what we believe to be the best pick in every round of your fantasy draft in 2024.
That's right.
Of course, this is from a one quarterback perspective. Maybe we'll do super flex if it's requested. But every round, what is the best pick? Hit the like button, subscribe if you like the content. Let's start with round one.
Okay.
Round one, you got a lot of options. You know, a lot of fantastic names in round one.
Absolutely.
But I'm more speaking to people who have a pick after the 104. So let's say you're from the middle of the board to the back end. I believe the best pick is going to be Bijan Robinson, my RB2, RB3 on Sleeper, and the RB2 on ESPN.
Okay.
There are a few players that I'm projecting to see the amount of touches that Bijan Robinson will in 2024. I mean, as a rookie, he was 12th in total touches in the NFL, and yet we all complained about the misuse from Arthur Smith for good reason, right? Tyler Algier, for example, last year had way too many rushing attempts. Guys, Tyler Algier last year had 36% of the rushing market share. Bijan had 41%. Do you know how low that is for an RB1? 41% of the market. Out of 32 teams in the NFL last year, only 2 teams gave their RB1 less of the market share than Bijan Robinson, less of the rushing attempts than Bijan Robinson. That was the Browns with Jerome Ford, the Ravens with Gus Edwards. Falcons were 30th, okay? Barely gave him any of the rushing share. Funnily enough, both the Browns and the Ravens, what happened to their RB1 before week 3?
Yeah.
Nick Chubb went down, J.K. Dobbins went down. So if Chubb and Dobbins were healthy, I bet you the Falcons would have been last on that list, let alone, again, more misuse. Tyler Algier doubled Bijan Robinson's rushing attempts inside the 5-yard line. Name a better combo than Arthur Smith and misusing a top 10 pick. The good news is this offense has completely changed. Got a brand new bag. Santa's got a brand new bag, brand new makeover in Atlanta.
Code name.
Arthur Smith is gone. You got Raheem Morris at head coach. Arthur Smith is not calling the plays anymore. He's not the play caller. It's now Zach Robinson. And obviously you go from Desmond Ridder to Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
Zach Robinson, the new OC in Atlanta, the same guy who helped Kyren Williams average over 20 points per game. Think about what he could do with a talent like Bijan Robinson. Bijan himself said, look, they're going to start using me like CMC. They're going to use me, the way the Niners do. And Zach Robinson himself from Coach Speak Index confirmed, yeah, that's what we're going to do. We're going to get the ball to that guy as many times as we can. And remember, at the beginning of this take, I told you guys that Bijan was 12th in touches per game. Guess who was first? Christian McCaffrey. They want to use him like that guy. Bijan's in serious contention to be one of the most valuable players in fantasy this year when all is said and done.
Yeah, I mean, Bijan Robinson, I think phenomenal value at the end of the first. Completely agree. Let's go to the second round. Bring you another running back who I honestly think he should be in the first round. Now that I'm doing this research, I think there's a phenomenal value, and that's fuck Saquon Barkley. Family-friendly stream, family-friendly show. I'm sorry.
He's a Giants fan in case anyone
It's Saquon Barkley.
He's bitter. He needs to move on, and there's a lot of bitterness.
It could have been
stored in
any
his
other
heart.
team. Sleeper.
Pay the man then.
Oh, man.
That's on you.
On Sleeper, he's RB7, ESPN RB5. He is my RB5. The upside is incredible going into the 2024 season. I was surprised when I saw the 16th overall player on Sleeper's ADP here, because Saquon is now in the Eagles, and the expectation is extremely high, especially with the workload that he's going to be getting. Let's start off with the terrible offensive line and what he's going into, because I think this is pretty key. Look at the Giants versus the Eagles since Saquon was drafted in 2018. Look at, 21st to 5th, 17th to 1st. I mean, you can see here, out of the years that he's been in the league, the Eagles have had a top 5 every single year outside of 1 year, and that was 2020. In 2020, the Eagles, that offensive line was injured, okay? Being one of the 5 running backs to average over 15 fantasy points per game in the past 2 years behind the third worst offensive line in the league is pretty crazy. It's pretty incredible. Okay, there's no question that Saquon Barkley can continue his success with the Eagles. If we saw DeAndre Swift getting this big gaping holes, you know what that's from?
No.
Pat McAfee? Oh, man. when they break down the offensive line. Anyway,
Yeah.
DeAndre Swift going behind those big gaping holes, and it felt like almost every play. We saw a career high for DeAndre Swift in carries and in yards, right? So let's not pass up on Saquon Barkley here. The second one, I think a lot of people have concerns about, is a tush push, or technically third, is a tush push. I do believe people are going to be a little bit hesitant to draft Saquon, saying, well, he's not going to be getting these goal line opportunities. They have to tush push Jalen Hurts, blah, blah, blah. They never had Saquon. They never had a guy that can bench either the same amount as Jalen Hurts or potentially even more. Say quads, okay? DeAndre Swift, who is not a power back. Kenneth Gainwell, who is not a power back. Boston Scott, who is not a power back. And Rashad Penny, thank you so much for your service. I really didn't believe in you. Unfortunately, Jalen Hurts had 15 rushing touchdowns last year. The Eagles running back had 17. I think that easily changes. I think seven, excuse me. That easily changes, right? These things can probably even now. I see Jalen Hurts not going into double-digit touchdowns coming into this year with Saquon Barkley. Obviously, that's a bit of a projection. They're going to be taking care of Jalen Hurts going into this year, and they should be giving Saquon Barkley the ball in goal line situations. And I think the ADP where he's going right now, I would say the 204 in the second round, I think it's too late. I think he should be going higher.
I love the idea of getting like an Amon-Ra and then a Saquon in round 2. That's such a cool start.
Yeah.
All right, the round 3. This guy is technically almost going in round 4 in a lot of ADP. In ESPN ADP, he's definitely round 4. In Sleeper, he is in round 3, just barely. I think he is one of the best picks in round 3. That is Jalen Waddle. You are drafting Jalen Waddle at his floor. There is literally no risk to draft Jalen Waddle at his current ADP. 21 on Sleeper, 23 on ESPN amongst wide receivers. He hasn't finished below wide receiver 21 on a per game basis at any point in his career.
Yeah.
Last year, he was a wide receiver 34 season-long finish, but best way to actually indicate what the value of a player is points per game basis. That's why on this channel, you will constantly hear us reference points per game. Waddle is due for some positive regression after a career low in receiving yards and receiving touchdowns, meaning he will regress to the mean closer to his first and second year numbers. I mean, if you look last year, if he had a healthy year, he would have, if you extrapolate his numbers across a full season, he would have finished wide receiver 16 anyway, and you would have been happy with it. It's just that he dealt with some injuries. And this offense is extremely efficient. There's not a more efficient on a per touch basis offense for fantasy football than the Miami Dolphins. Even though Tyreek is a clear number 1, everybody can eat.
Yeah.
The top 3 players in fantasy points per snap. Y'all ever heard that before? Fantasy points per snap? Yeah, I'm digging into my bag.
Go ahead.
Fantasy points per snap in 2023. The Dolphins had the top 3 players in that metric. Achane number 1, Tyreek Hill number 2, Raheem Mostert number 3. On a per snap basis, the Dolphins had 3 of the most valuable players in fantasy football. And last year alone, Jalen Waddle scored more fantasy points per snap. Remember, he didn't play as much as we wanted to because of injuries. More fantasy points per snap than Amon-Ra St. Brown, Brandon Ayuk, Jamar Chase, Stephon Diggs, A.J. Brown, DJ Moore, Devontae Adams, and DK Metcalf. So, even though he'll never be like an 8+, 160 target type of player with Tyreek Hill, he's in a special offense that allows him to reach an elite ceiling on a week-to-week basis. And I'm going to be taking that guy as a third player on my team every single time if I get a shot to do so. All right, we're about to get into the next round, but the world needs to know that you don't have to wait until September to play fantasy football.
Come on.
We are playing fantasy football today, tomorrow, next month, the previous months. That's because of Underdog Fantasy. That's right. If you haven't signed up, use the promo code LAND. When you sign up, we will match your deposit 50% all the way up to $250, which if you do the math, you're getting $125 free dollars just by using our code on us. They got special pick'ems as well, player props on the website. The most recent one was Caitlin Clark over under 0.5 points. And then you can pick the rest of the pick'ems to obviously double your money, sometimes 5, 10, 20x your money. So don't wait until September like a noob to play fantasy football. Play it today. Get in some drafts with us and use a promo code. Let's get back to the video.
Coming into my 4th round guy, and I'm going to bring you an honorable mention really quick. Cooper Kupp, even though it's not my guy, I think is a great honorable mention. I really wanted to bring him, but I thought the value was better with Mark Andrews here. Really similar to Jalen Waddle, just a whole round later. He was the last player in the 4th round, nearly going into the 5th round as a tight end 4 on Sleepers and ESPN tight end 3. He is my tight end 4 coming into this year. People forgot about Mark Andrews. And let me remind you that Andrews was hurt going into the season and was playing through an injury the whole year. He had a quad injury, if you remember, coming into preseason. He missed week 1, and then you saw that stretch of games. But let's have a look at what he did while injured. Okay, week 2 to 11, 45 receptions, 61 targets, over 500 yards, 6 touchdowns, averaging 13.5 fantasy points per game. He was a tight end 4 within that span. During that span, he was averaging more fantasy points than Sam Laporta, our beloved Sam Laporta, Evan Ingram, David Njoku, Trey McBride, and Dalton Kincaid. And coming into this season, he is still the number 1 target. The Ravens got rid of OBJ, who really didn't make any impact this past year. Had multiple opportunities to draft another wide receiver with this amazing deep class that we saw in 2023. It's Mark Andrews number 1, Zay Flowers number 2, and let's throw Rashad Bateman there as number 3. I believe Zay Flowers will take the next step going into the 2024 season, have more opportunities, more targets, et cetera, et cetera. But even when Andrews was limited on the field, he was still outproducing Flowers in areas. And you can see from weeks 2 to 11, Flowers versus Andrews, nearly identical in receptions, nearly identical in targets. He had more yards than Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, and obviously led him in touchdowns. What does his number look like if Mark Andrews was fully healthy? Right? I mean, that could have been Zay Flowers is nowhere near Mark Andrews. Let me remind you who Mark Andrews is, because I think a lot of people are forgetting. Okay, and to close out this take, Mark Andrews has finished outside the top 10 only once in his 6-year career on a fantasy points per game basis. Every other year, he has finished inside the top 5 amongst tight ends. It's pretty incredible when you think about this here with Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews, and there's no other weapons coming in. So I think it's phenomenal value here at the end of the 4th round. Now, I'm not even a person that takes tight ends early. And if Mark Andrews comes here at the 412, I'm taking him every day.
For the first time in a long time, those top tight ends are actually kind of reasonably priced in fantasy this year. It's pretty rare. All right. I actually for round 5 would like to give an honorable mention as well. Even though I'm a Kendre Miller guy, I think Alvin Kamara is a great pick in the 5th round. I don't actually understand how he is in the 5th round. Like I don't get that ADP.
Sure.
We all know what he's capable of. He's capable of being a top 5 running back on a per game basis. So even though I think Kendre takes a step this year, I'm shocked the 5th round is Kamara's ADP. It makes no sense to me. But outside of Alvin Kamara, I think Tank Dell is the best pick in round 5.
Come on.
My wide receiver 19, that is much higher than Sleeper and ESPN's ADP. They're mid-20s. Tank Dell, why is he not even being considered in the conversation as the number 1 wide receiver on this team? I get it. You can make a case for Stephon Diggs. You can make a case for Nico Collins. Absolutely, you can easily do that. But you can also easily do that for Tank Dell, in my opinion. I don't get why the ADP between these guys is so different. But if you look at weeks 1 to 5, Tank Dell was not a starter yet for the Texans. From weeks 8 to 12, after the bye week, he became a full-time starter for this team. His snap percentage goes up to 83% in that span. 8 to 12, weeks 8 to 12. His targets per game skyrocket up. His yards per game go up. And his fantasy points per game from weeks 8 to 12, when he became a starter, he was averaging over 20 fantasy points per game. That was 5th on a per game basis amongst wide receivers. Now, with the addition of Stephon Diggs, of course we have to lower expectations. Don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not telling you that Tank Dell is going to average over 20 points per game. But I am telling you what he is capable of, what his ceiling is capable of. And that is exciting when you think about also his chemistry with CJ Stroud. He has that inbuilt chemistry that Stephon Diggs does not have yet.
Yeah.
Tank Dell is your cheapest buy-in to have a wide receiver attached to CJ Stroud. Look at the ADP between these names across all these sites.
Come on.
Tank Dell is wide receiver 25, 26, 26, mid-20s in every site. Collins and Diggs are wide receiver 15 or 14 on every single site, except we've also got Diggs at 20 on Underdog.
Yeah.
On any platform, Tank Dell is the cheapest buy-in.
Yes.
And he has every reason to be the number 1. I'm not saying he will be, but this is the cheapest buy-in for you. And if anyone can support multiple fantasy wide receivers, we already know CJ Stroud can, because he did it as a rookie. So if you can go anchor RB in round 1, get a name like Bijan Robinson, then hit 3 wide receivers in a row, and Tank Dell is your 4th wide receiver, I think you're winning your league. So I think he's an incredible pick in round 5.
Yeah, completely agree. I think we especially look at all those values versus Nico and Stiggs. Tank is the guy. All right, going into round 6. This one was tough. I didn't love anyone that was in round 6. I would say there is somebody as an honorable mention, which I will mention after your take because I think that could potentially give away who you're giving in round 7. But the guy that I'm bringing here is David Montgomery. If you guys know me, I've been a Monty, hype trainer and a guy that's saying, you know what, if you just want a consistent running back in the 6th, go out and get David Montgomery. RB 20 on Sleeper, RB 22 on ESPN, and he is my RB 18. Once again, consistency in the 6 is exactly where you're going to be getting David Montgomery. And if you're looking for a running back that's going to be averaging around 50 to 55% of the snaps, there obviously on a high-powered offense and one of the best offensive line is David Montgomery. Okay, Jahmyr Gibbs going into his sophomore year, there's no doubt he's going to be taking the next step going into 2024. He's going to be getting more opportunities on the ground, especially more opportunities in the air. But we have heard Dan Campbell said this is going to be a 1-2 punch. This is exactly what they want to bring. David Montgomery will have a role in this backfield. And let's just say you went heavy wide receiver earlier in the draft, maybe 3 wide receivers, you got a tight end, and then you could potentially get you go 2 running backs around 5, and then David Montgomery being your RB2. I'm okay with that. Why? Because of the goal line opportunities. The goal line opportunities is exciting, especially carries inside the 5-yard line we saw this past year in the Green Bay, or not the Green Bay, but the Detroit Lions backfield. Monty with 59.4% of those goal line carries inside the 5-yard line, and Jahmyr Gibbs with 35.5% here. And not only that, you have to remember how many touchdowns David Montgomery has scored. And I think that can easily continue here because whether you like it or not, he has a role and he could potentially just be the Jamal Williams, what we saw a couple years ago. And that's just as okay with a higher upside, right? Touchdown leaders amongst running backs, Raheem Mostert with 18, CMC with 14, and then David Montgomery with 13 there. So I'm taking David Montgomery every time in the 6th.
I love Monty, and I'm curious to hear about your honorable mention in a second. Let's go to round 7. You're looking for a high upside quarterback. Kyler Murray should not be available in round 7. What are we doing? Pick him in round 7.
Come on.
He's the quarterback 9 in ADP on Sleeper, quarterback 11 on ESPN. I have him as my quarterback 6. The fantasy community in the last couple of years has been in a constant mode of sleeping on Kyler Murray. I don't know what it is. Meanwhile, Kyler Murray last year, coming off a torn ACL with no Hollywood Brown for most of the time, averaged more points per game than CJ Stroud, more points per game than Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Jared Goff, Tua Tagovailoa. Coming off a torn ACL, by the way, and without his number 1 weapon in Hollywood, the guy he had chemistry with. CJ Stroud added Stephon Diggs, Kyler Murray added Marvin Harrison Jr. But if you look at CJ Stroud's finish last year, 18.7 points per game, that would be Kyler Murray's worst fantasy finish in the last 4 seasons. You are literally drafting Kyler Murray at his floor. At his floor. There's no risk. Quarterback 9 on Sleeper. On ESPN, he's a quarterback 11. His worst points per game finish since he's like the last 4 years with a full season is quarterback 7. His situation has improved. If 18.9 points per game was his floor last year, what is his floor this year with a Marvin Harrison Jr. type of talent on the squad? With Trey McBride in his 2nd year, coming off a torn ACL, another year where he can rush the ball and be a threat in the red zone. Kyler Murray, I hate to say it, he should be a dark horse candidate, for quarterback 1 finish. Okay. Because I think there's every reason to believe in him. Even we saw a worse version of him, Josh Dobbs, be someone that people were consistently streaming last year. So Kyler Murray, my favorite pick in round 7.
Yeah, look, and I love the quarterback position here. And like you said, I felt like your value at the quarterback in round 7 was better compared to who I was bringing at honorable mention in Joe Burrow.
In round 6.
In round 6, I would just say QB, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in the community on Sleeper's ADP. You can get him in round 6. I think it's pretty great still. But yes, Kyler Murray has the better value there. All right. In the last round here for us, round 8, I'm coming around.
Speak my language, brother.
I'm coming around.
Speak my language. You know this is my guy.
Deontay Johnson, wide receiver 43 on Sleepers ADP, 92nd
Come on.
overall. ESPN wide receiver 36. He's higher significantly on ESPN, and my wide receiver 38. Let me remind you of Deontay Johnson's situation. One of the worst quarterback situations for a wide receiver could have in 2023. The quarterback carousel. Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, Mitch Trubisky here, and according to PFF's in the passing grade, the passing grade on PFF has been terrible. 68.8, 65.3, 44.2% there on the passing grade for those quarterbacks there. But let's look how dominant Deontay was in 10 to 19 yards, but his quarterbacks couldn't get the ball to him and give him these catchable balls. So if you're looking at this chart here,
10 to 19 yards down the field, is that right?
Yeah, correct. 10 to 19 yards down the field. This is pretty exciting. If you look at Deontay Johnson, your top left on this graphic, you can see the yards per catch target. He was first. He was out there getting down the field, being open, but the catchable target rate, look how low. It was dead last, meaning that those quarterbacks couldn't get him the ball. Whether it was offensive line issues, whether it was overthrown, underthrown, whatever the case may be, he was there trying to get those opportunities and just didn't have the quarterback play. The new Carolina Panthers and Bryce Young, significant changes during the offseason there. Obviously, they bring in Dave Canellis from the Tampa Bay and improving the Tampa Bay offense in 2023. Okay, let's look at what he did with the Bucs this past year. 2022, the Bucs under Brian Leftwich and points per game was 25th, bottom 10th in the league. And then in 2023, under Dave Canellis, he brings that up to 18th. Now, it's only 7 spots. But those 7 spots are pretty significant because he took this team to the playoffs, destroyed one of the high-powered offenses in the Philadelphia Eagles as if it was like a backyard football game. Yeah. So keep that in mind when you're looking, 7 spots is not that big. No. It's not something we should be taking lightly here. Obviously, new weapons, new offensive line with Deontay Johnson, Xavier Leggett, Jonathan Brooks, Jontavion Sanders here. And obviously, one of the biggest conversation is this terrible separator that we had in Carolina in 2023. According to ESPN Analytics, this is a separation chart of how guys can get open, right? Out of 153 wide receivers, look at the 3 top wide receivers that Carolina had. Obviously, the best wide receiver for the Carolina Panthers last year was Adam Thielen, ranked 37th out of 153 wide receivers. Then look at Jonathan Mingo at 152, second to last, and then DJ Chark, bottom 10th in separation. It was terrible. But look at Deontay Johnson last year as well. Top 12 in separating for the huge Pittsburgh Steelers. You're talking about... You talk about somebody that needs to get separation. Deontay Johnson comes in. I love Xavier Leggett as well, who's going to be a big body wide receiver. Deontay Johnson here is clearly the best value in the 8th round for
I'm
you
just
guys.
Going to go on record here. You're not going to steal my guy. Okay.
No.
I was in on that. I'm just kidding. Everyone's welcome on the train, but I'm glad we're at this point now because I thought we were going to have an entire offseason of disagreeing on Deontay Johnson.
It was a little bit of research and, talking about it. It's okay.
He's going to be the clear number 1. I mean, that's something I wanted to add on here is you talk about, targets per game. He's going to dominate this wide receiver room, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Look at what Adam Thielen did as a dominant wide receiver target share on this team last year.
Yeah.
And just add a better version of Adam Thielen at this point of his career. So I think Deontay Johnson's going to be an absolute value. And I'm glad we're on the same page.
Yeah.
So
welcome.
Great take.
Thanks, man.
All right. That is it for today, guys. Do us a favor. Hit that like button to show some love. Subscribe if you like the content. And, of course, there will be more videos coming. We'll see you guys very, very soon. But before we go, we got to let you know that if you want our rankings, best ball, redraft, we'll have Superflex 1 quarterback rankings. If you want our draft guide, which there's so much content that we're going to give you guys in our draft guide. If you want all of that and more, then become a Mother Flocker member with the promo code LAND on the Flock Fantasy website. You can check that out in the description. But outside of that, have a good rest of your day. We'll see you soon. All up. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, LAND, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy. Even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.